What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot of volleyball to discuss, such as Penn State men's volleyball. They've won 3 in a row now as they took down Ohio State, and they also took down NJT twice. Are the Nittany Lions still a threat in terms of winning the entire thing, or will they just be proud to make the NCAA tournament? Also, Hawaii continues to win as they took down UC Santa Barbara not once but twice. And Long Beach State and UC Irvine both had close calls against the likes of CSUN and UC San Diego, but they emerged with 2 wins. UCLA just continues to brew win as they took down Stanford not once but twice. Also, in terms of NCAA beach volleyball, how about Texas taking down number 1 UCLA and number 3 USC? Also, in terms of the MLB, All-Star Weekend is officially over in Douglas as the Dallas Pulse are right on the coattails of the NBA time. Will they be able to catch them? Also, Cleveland volleyball just continues to have a tight race as we'll be bringing Houston in the playoffs. All that and more here on Set Point. So hand me volleyball, set today. So I'm about to serve up some volleyball action on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way in episode 344 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platforms to go live on X and on YouTube. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on X, as we've actually just simplified it just down to X in terms of our social media, and on YouTube as well, as you're about to see that on screen right now. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on on X, and also subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube. We're really trying to reach 500 subscribers, and before we can reach 1,000, we are trying to first get there to 500. So with your help, we could definitely make it to 500, and we could definitely make it to 1,000 and beyond. So thank you for your support in terms of subscribing and following IE Sports Radio on social media. Also, check out our website, iesportsradio.com, for all of your latest sports news and much more. You'll even get to meet some of the insiders as well as the hosts of our certain shows, such as myself, Teran Rodriguez with Set Point, and much more. For the last 11 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports days around the country, or major sports around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout out to our sponsors, Plant Jerky, Premier Brisket Beef Jerky, and Vital Apparel. So without any further delay, let's get on into what our sponsors are all about. I'll see you all in a bit.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows and our sponsors. Make sure to check out our website, iesportsradio.com. We greatly appreciate all your support, and we appreciate you for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And the way you can follow Setpoint on social media is on X, formerly known as Twitter, at set_point.ie. You can also follow Setpoint on TikTok at set_point.ie as well. And you can also follow me personally on X as well at Teran Rodriguez 1. You can also follow Setpoint on Instagram at set_point.iesr. That's where most of my content has been going. So that's something you need to that's a site where you need to follow me on in terms of social media. So without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. So we got to start with some NCAA men's volleyball. There were 17 ranked matches, but we only had one upset. We might as well just go over that upset right now. As we had number 15 Ohio State taking on number 17 Penn State in the battle of the quote-unquote Big Ten teams, as this actually took place at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse on the University of campus of Pittsburgh. And I thought it was a really good place to have that, as there was actually 1,000, a little over 1,000 in attendance, which is actually pretty good if you ask me, especially for a weekday. You got to remember it was a weekday. It was a Wednesday when this match took place. But in the end, Penn State was able to upend the Ohio State in 4 sets, which was a pretty good win for the Nittany Lions, especially since they haven't had too many big-time wins. Penn State was led by Sean Harvey, who had 20 kills. They also got 13 kills from Matt Luoma. Ohio State was led by Shane Wetzel at 14 kills, while Eliel Salvatores had 12 kills. So my takeaway for Penn State is this. It's about time they finally got themselves a nice little win right there. I mean, I know it's not the biggest ranked-on-ranked victory, but honestly, it's a very good win right there. It helps build some confidence. And that actually could have been a little bit of a trap game right there, just because they had another big series against NJIT, which I'll get into a little bit. But it's a good win right there, especially against a rival. And in a venue like that, that's a pretty solid win right there. That's another thing I got to mention. I mean, I know Penn State pretty much had the home court advantage just because they didn't have to leave. I mean, it's not leave to go out of the state, but it's still a nice place to pick up a win. And then for Ohio, and also it it spreads more awareness when it comes to volleyball all around the country. So a great win for Penn State, picking up that win. For Ohio State, unfortunately, it was a tough loss for them. I mean, they so much for their good fortune when it came to those upsets in the MIVA, but Penn State was able to cool them off, snap that 3-game win streak, and halt their losing streak of their own. So Penn State's back on the winning track, and they only went up from there. Jumping to Thursday, we had quite a bit of MIVA action. So we had McKendree sweeping number 12 McKendree sweeping number 20 Purdue Fort Wayne, number 10 Loyola Chicago taking down number 16 Lewis in 4. We had number 7 Ball State taking down number 11 Lindenwood in straight sets. That was kind of surprising, but Ball State is just on a whole other level. That was a pretty darn impressive win, especially since they didn't have one player crack double digits in terms of kills. And then we had this little historic upset not historic upset, but historic win in the MIVA. We had Northern Kentucky in its first year as an NCAA men's volleyball program. They took down Queens of North Carolina in 5 for their first MIVA win ever, which I think is pretty darn good. So every team in the MIVA was able to pick up at least one conference win. So a great one right there for the Norse. And then that pretty much did that for MIVA Thursday. So jumping to Friday, we had an EIVA action. Penn State taking down NJIT in straight sets. The Nittany Lions just continue to own the EIVA. I really wish we could have like an actual Big Ten conference as opposed to just having an EIVA. I mean, nothing against the EIVA, but I think it would be great to have an actual Big Ten conference. I mean, if you saw my interview with Jeff Nygaard at USC, he really wants to have an actual Big Ten conference, and we like to see more schools get more men's volleyball teams, like maybe Nebraska or Wisconsin or anything of that sort. Moving on, we had Northern Kentucky taking down Queens in the MIVA in straight sets. So 2 big wins for Northern Kentucky, especially since that kind of gives them a glimmer of a hope in terms of making the MIVA conference tournament, because the top 8 teams make it to the conference tournament, whereas the 9th team gets left out. So that's a massive win right there from Northern Kentucky, because they have the tiebreaker over the Royals, and more importantly, they now have a 1-game lead on them. So elsewhere in action, there was Damon sweeping UMES. Before I continue, I do want to encourage everyone to watch the ESPN documentary. I think it was a 30 for 30 with UMES. Why Not Us? Definitely encourage you all to do so, to watch that 30 for 30. It's definitely it's going to be a great thing to watch. I have yet to watch it, but from what I'm hearing, it's amazing. You got to remember that UMES is in its first year as an HBCU. It's representing for all the HBCU D1 men's volleyball schools out there. And Dr. Anitra Brockman is the first African-American women's volleyball she's the first African women's coach on the men's side, which I think is pretty awesome if you ask me. And Dr. Anitra Brockman is absolutely amazing. Class act person right there, and I think she's doing great things for UMES. So moving on, jumping to the SIAC, actually, we had Fort Valley State outlasting Central State in 5. So with this matchup, this was kind of a sneaky matchup right here. So Fort Valley State actually didn't have its star player Isaiah Fed, but they were able to outlast Central State in a 5-set barn burner, as Tavian Martin led the way with 11 kills. Their kills were distributive without Isaiah Fed in the lineup. I don't know what his whereabouts were in terms of whether he was injured or if he had something personal, but Tavian Martin led the way with 11 kills. Keaton Long had 9 kills. Muhammad Mbe and Jamari Griffin both had 8 kills. Fort Valley State only hit 223, whereas Central State, they hit 204. They're led by Jaden Harris, who had 17 kills. Toolman Williams added 14 kills, and then Simon Fallet had 11 kills. But yeah, close call right there. Fort Valley State almost got reverse swept, but they were able to clutch up in the 5th set. And man, that's a huge win right there, because they also beat Central State in 4 the next day. And Tavian Martin was a big part of that win right there. And that's big right there, because it shows that Fort Valley State can win without Isaiah Fed. And Isaiah Fed, let me just say, he's the first ever Fort Valley State men's volleyball player to crack 1,000 kills. Considering Fort Valley State hasn't been around for a long time, but that's still a big win right there, winning without Isaiah Fed. Then you also had in the EIVA, George Mason beating St. Francis in 5. That's a nice win right there for the Patriots. Fairleigh Dickinson took down DUville. That's a solid win right there. Charleston took down Princeton. That's a solid win right there for the Golden Eagles. Man, this has just been one of those years for Princeton. Long Beach State outlasted CSUN in a 5-set barn burner in Northridge. UC Irvine swept UC San Diego in Irvine. Pepperdine took down BYU in 4. USC swept Menlo. That's not surprising. Vanguard was able to take down Jessup in a 5-set barn burner, which was nice. And UC Merced in its first year in the MPSF, they earned their first win in the MPSF, taking down Concordia Irvine in 4. So that's a solid win right there for UC Merced. And then I can't forget the final Friday matchup. We had number 2 Hawaii taking down number 8 UC Santa Barbara in 4. That's a nice win right there, considering Hawaii was coming off of those two big wins over Long Beach State. There could have easily been a hangover when it came to Long Beach State, but Hawaii was able to get the job done. So that's a nice little win right there. Then jumping to Saturday, it was pretty much more of the same. Penn State swept NJIT. Fort Valley State took down Central State in 4. This time, Princeton was able to get revenge against Charleston, taking them down in straight sets. That's a nice little win right there for the Tigers. Gives them some momentum. Ball State swept McKendree. Was not expecting that because McKendree is a tough place to win at, but the Cardinals are pretty much in the driver's seat. They only have Loyola Chicago to deal with as their main threat in terms of the MIVA, but yeah, do not underestimate this Ball State team. This team could even be an at-large and they make the NCAA tournament, but it's a wait-and-see process. I don't think they want to leave anything to chance, just because even though there's another spot added in terms of the NCAA tournament, I don't think Ball State wants to leave anything to chance in terms of making the big dance. George Mason took down St. Francis in 4. Vanguard took down William Jessup in 5 again. USC took down Menlo. I'm just going to address this right now for USC. It's good that they're winning the matches that they're supposed to win, but let's see how they do against a ranked foe. I think the rest of the way, USC has nothing but ranked foes. They've got Stanford this week at USC, and then they've got BYU in their first match away from the state of California. And then they've got Pepperdine to close off the regular season. So these next 3 weeks are going to really test USC to see what their bravado and moxie looks like. And I'm hoping to be at that Pepperdine USC matchup at Galen Center. Then we had number 1 UCLA speak number 14 Stanford. UCLA had a bye last week. They had the week off probably because of spring break, but the Bruins just continue on winning. And even it was still a pretty packed house at Maples Pavilion, but still, UCLA just continues to brew win. And then Pepperdine took down BYU in 4 again. That actually marked the first time since, I think it was 2006, that Pepperdine swept this regular season series at BYU. And I can confirm that none of the players on Pepperdine's current team were even born the last time Pepperdine wound up winning the regular season series against BYU. I actually do want to confirm that, but I can't confirm that the last time Pepperdine wound up winning sweeping the regular season series at BYU, mind you, was before any of the Pepperdine players were born, which I thought was pretty cool, if you ask me. But yeah, it's really impressive. I really think that's a big win right there. So it's okay. So it was 2002. So Pepperdine wound up sweeping the regular season series at BYU since 2002. And I can confirm that none of the Pepperdine players on their current team were even born then. So yeah, this is why I'm not high on BYU this year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if BYU was like, if BYU couldn't even make it out of the quarterfinals. I mean, I know BYU is hosting the MPSF tournament, but here's the thing about them. It's like, they can't even beat Stanford. They've now lost 4 straight. Thankfully, they've got Vanguard in their next couple matches. I'm hoping to see BYU on Thursday. But, I mean, I want to see more from BYU. I want to see BYU make a statement. And then also UCLA swept Stanford a second time. So I forgot to mention the first match where UCLA took down Stanford, UCLA's Andrew Rowan surpassed 4,000 assists, which was really good. Also, thanks to that second win over Stanford, UCLA is now 20-0, which is the first time since 1984 that the Bruins have started 20-0, which is really impressive. So UCLA just continues to mow down the competition, even if it's ranked. So the big question is, will UCLA come up big against Pepperdine? Because we all got to remember that Pepperdine took down UCLA in the MPSF tournament last year, and Pepperdine has a very good offense with the likes of Ryan Barnett, Cole Hartke, Jose Gomez, Andre Polomek, James Eady. The list goes on, and Jacob Riley. Can't forget the libero as well. So jumping to the Big West Conference, I actually attended this match this past Saturday. Number 3 Long Beach State hosting number 18 CSUN. Now, what I was hoping for was we would get a barn burner of a matchup, like we did the previous match. But unfortunately, I think CSUN used up most of its good match, and sadly, they just could not keep up with the Beach as Long Beach State swept CSUN. So in the first set, Jalen Phillips actually got to 7 kills. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a long match for Long Beach State. And Jalen Phillips is on pace to have like 21 kills up to 3 sets, barring it'll be guaranteed to have 3 sets. But after set number 2, Long Beach State held Jalen Phillips to only 2 kills the rest of the way. So in total, Jalen Phillips only finished with 9 kills, which I thought was really impressive. They held him killless in the second set, which I thought was pretty impressive. So Long Beach State really did a good job of doing their homework, keeping the ball away from getting to Jalen Phillips. So I think it was a great game plan and a great adjustment. And everyone knows that Jalen Phillips is CSUN's big-time player. So I thought Long Beach State did a good job in that second match. By the way, Long Beach State honored its 2016 men's volleyball team that made the Final Four, which I thought was pretty cool, if you ask me. I kind of totally forgot that they were honoring the Final Four team. Back when Alan Knipe was still head coach, Nick McCrae was his assistant, Andy Reid was also assistant as well. So that was a pretty nice touch right there. So while there was a lot of good that Long Beach State took away from that match, there was a little bad as Jake Pizzanti, their setter, did kind of hurt his shoulder. I talked to him after the match. He said he was good. And then his father, Craig, who a former Set Point guest, as we all know, he said that he's looking to know more. And he hopes that it's nothing more than a stinger injury. I'm hoping for that too, but it shows that Long Beach State still has depth at the setter position because they still have Island Doty, and Island Doty did a good job filling in for Jake Pizzanti following Pizzanti's injury. So hoping for the sake of Long Beach State that it's not a serious injury for Pizzanti, but it shows that Island Doty definitely has what it takes to continue to lead the offense for Long Beach State. And then closing off the last couple of matches of the Big West, we had number 5 UC Irvine outlast number 13 UC San Diego in La Jolla in 5. That was a nice little barn burner matchup right there. As the Anteaters, they knew that they could not afford another Big West Conference loss if they want to have any hope of winning the Big West Conference regular season championship and maybe getting one of 2 top seeds in the Big West Conference championships. And that matchup could have actually been a trap game because this week they've got Hawaii on the docket on Friday and on Saturday. I'm confirmed to be at UC Irvine's match on Friday. I'm certain I should be there on Saturday. I mean, I did get the green light, but we shall see. But I am excited to see UC Irvine again. It feels like I haven't seen UC Irvine since, well, when they last played UCLA, which actually was actually a month ago, which is pretty surprising. So I'm sure all the UC Irvine players are going to be happy to see me. I just have been so busy, and I unfortunately haven't been able to make it to their matches, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then closing off the week 13 matches, we had number 2 Hawaii sweep number 18 UC Santa Barbara. This was one of the more dominant matches that Hawaii had. They dealt 9 service aces, including the walk-off service ace. Hawaii had no sort of hangover in terms of the Long Beach State match, the Long Beach State series, as the Rainbow Warriors are 4-0. So I guess we can call them Hawaii 4-0 instead of Hawaii 5-0. Get it? Because if you all saw the title of last week's episode, it was Hawaii 2-0. Now Hawaii is 4-0. Anyway, so Hawaii will be going back to Southern California to take on UC Irvine. They'll also be playing UC San Diego the following week, but they got to get through UC Irvine because that right there is going to be a very, very grueling matchup. As my boy Marcus, Los Great, pops to the chat room, he says, salute. Thank you, Marcus. Salute to you too, sir. All right, but that'll do it for all of the week 13 NCAA men's volleyball matches. So let's jump on into the AVCA poll. So not much happened in terms of this week's AVCA poll. The biggest jumper was Penn State as they went up 2 spots. BYU went down to number 10. Loyola went up to number 9. Lewis and Ohio State are both tied for number 16. And that's pretty much that in terms of the AVCA poll. Nothing really changed entirely. There was no big changes, which is a little disappointing, but hey, that's what happens when you have no upsets. So there's that for the AVCA poll. So I already talked about the off the block media poll from last week, the one where I was late voting and my vote probably didn't count. This time I actually got my ballot in time. So here's who I voted for. I think I actually hold on. So I actually did mess up on the poll. I think I put UC Santa. No. Actually, no, I didn't. I copy pasted. So, who I voted for in this week's poll, it pretty much was the same. I mean, you got UCLA 1, Hawaii 2, Long Beach State 3, USC 4, UC Irvine 5, Pepperdine 6, Ball State 7, Lindenwood 8, even though they did suffer a sweep, and they needed 5 to take down Purdue Fort Wayne on Saturday. UC Santa Barbara 9, and then BYU 10. So, okay. So, yeah, I think I have 2 of these posts. Okay, so here's the actual one. So yeah, here's the one that I voted for, and yes, I can confirm that this was the one that I voted for. This was the actual one that I voted for this week, not as opposed to last week. So there you have it. I didn't really change much. I put UC Santa Barbara over BYU just because because UC Santa Barbara beat Pepperdine while BYU couldn't even beat Pepperdine once, which is pretty surprising if you ask me, but it is what it is. And sometimes that's just how it is sometimes when it comes to the sport of volleyball. But what can you do? I mean, this is reason number 101 why I'm not high on BYU this year. And hold on, I got it. Just gonna pull you over. Yeah, here was my actual ballot. So, okay, so yeah, this is the actual ballot, and I deleted the correct one. So there you go. There's the actual ballot right there, and there you have it right there. So nothing really changed when it came to my off the block ballot. So there it is. So anyway, that'll do it for the off the block media poll. So now let's jump on into week 14 of the NCAA men's volleyball season. As it looks like Christopher Lehman says, "Hi, Teran. Hope you're having a wonderful evening." Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. All right, so now let's jump to week 14 of the NCAA men's volleyball season. So this is the last full week before conference tournaments start. So where's the time gone? We're already in the month of April starting on Wednesday, and this is not an April Fool's joke. So nothing really happening on Tuesday, nothing really too special happening on Tuesday, just a bunch of Conference Carolinas matchup. I mean, Barton Mount Olive can actually be a pretty solid matchup, but it's not going to really be the de facto matchup for first place, unless, of course, Belmont Abbey starts slipping up, which I don't think is going to happen. I mean, Belmont Abbey's playing King of Tennessee. I don't think they're going to lose to them. No offense to King, of course. So jumping to Wednesday, nothing really out of the ordinary when it comes to that matchup. Thursday, let's see. Thursday, there's Lindenwood, number 11 Lindenwood tied for number 16 Lewis. That's kind of an interesting matchup. I mean, Lewis and Lindenwood. Lewis kind of needs to get back on track in terms of the win column, while Lindenwood also would like to, build up its resume and maybe give themselves some sort of chance. Maybe, just maybe, Ball State would slip up, but knowing Ball State, they're not going to be losing anytime soon. Then Thursday, we have some MPSF action. We have number 1 UCLA at number 6 Pepperdine. The two teams also face each other on Friday, which will be held at Pauley Pavilion. All right, this is going to be a fun matchup right here. UCLA at Pepperdine is going to be a real surefire matchup. I think this is probably series of the week right here, for reasons being because UCLA lost to Pepperdine in the MPSF tournament last year, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be in the back of most of those players' minds. And then for Pepperdine, this is their chance to really prove themselves. They've taken down Hawaii one time. They nearly took. They did lose to Long Beach State and UC Irvine. They still have yet to play USC. This at least one win over UCLA would be a statement win for the Waves. If they pull off that win, then that would be a massive win for Pepperdine. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. And then, like I said, I might go to BYU Vanguard. I just need to get the green light. Hopefully, I will be able to get the green light because it's Monday. And by the time the SID from Vanguard gets the email, hopefully, I'll be getting it by Tuesday at the latest, but we'll see. And then also on Thursday, we have CSUN at UC Santa Barbara on Thursday. The two teams also face each other on Saturday in Northridge. Man, if there's ever a match that CSUN needs to win, it would probably be this one. But you look at their remaining schedule, they've got Santa Barbara this week, then they've got UC Irvine the following week, and then they've got Hawaii the following week. So you got to wonder, where on any chance is their first conference win going to come? That's good. That's the $1 million question. Where will their first conference win come? And hopefully, for the sake of CSUN, they don't go winless, because they have a good team. It's just the matter of actually putting it together. And that's kind of what Theo Edwards said in the postgame interview. Once they figure everything out, they could be any team in the nation by any means necessary. So definitely do watch out for that. McKendree Loyola is going to be another good matchup. It's the Battle of Lebanon versus Chicago. That's going to be a real good matchup. Top 15 matchup right there. I definitely think the Bearcats definitely have a shot at beating Loyola. Last time these two teams faced one another, the Ramblers took down the Bearcats in straight sets. Now it's time for McKendree to rewrite its wrongs. And the biggest fan of McKendree will be Ball State, because the more Loyola loses and the more Ball State wins, the most likely Ball State will be the MIVA Conference champions in terms of the regular season and get that number 1 seed for the conference tournament. So now jumping to Friday, we have kind of a sneaky good matchup in the NEC. You've got Damon at FDU. I mean, FDU has beaten Princeton this year, but can they take down a red-hot Damon team? That still remains to be seen. Looking elsewhere at this matchup, there's Penn State at Charleston. Penn State, barring a collapse, Penn State's got the EIVA number 1 seed on lock. Then you got number 2 Hawaii at number 5 UC Irvine on Friday and on Saturday. You already know, like I said, I'm going to be there on Friday and most likely on Saturday unless something else comes up, which would be unfortunate, but I digress. And then also on Friday and on Saturday, you've got Long Beach State and UC San Diego. The two teams face each other in La Jolla on Friday, and then they face each other in Long Beach on Saturday. And I think that's kind of the crucial matchup right there. I mean, UC San Diego has a chance their chances of getting the number 1 seed and at least a top 2 spot are very slim. Long Beach State still has a good chance, but it still remains to be seen on if they're going to get that number 1 seed. Because they pretty much have to run the table from here on out and get a little help from the entire conference. So it's still a wait-and-see process. Then Friday and Saturday, you've also got number 14 Stanford at number 4 USC. Yeah, number 4 USC. So this is an intriguing matchup right here. The two teams also face each other on Saturday, like I mentioned. I think Stanford can play a little spoiler. It all depends on what version of USC we get. Last time these two teams faced one another, USC was not at full strength, and Stanford beat them twice. But that being said, I think USC definitely has the team to beat Stanford this time around. I mean, thankfully for USC's sake, they were able to snap that 6-match losing skid, which dated back to, I think it was 2021, but I can't be entirely sure of that. Either way, USC, they know that this matchup is just as important. This could be a trap series for USC because it would be easy to look ahead when it comes to the BYU series and the Pepperdine series. So USC has to take care of business against Stanford first. And then Saturday, we have pretty much more of the same. LIU and UMES, Damon at FDU, Harvard at George Mason on Friday and on Saturday. Sacred Heart at Princeton, a second straight night. Saturday, you've got Lindenwood at Loyola Chicago, which I think is going to be a really good matchup right there. That also could determine second place in the MIFA. But for Loyola and Lindenwood, this could also be make or break in terms of maybe getting an at-large spot. So we'll have to wait and see when it comes to that matchup. And then, like I said, you've got Stanford USC on Friday, this time earlier time at 5 p.m. Hawaii UC Irvine round 2 is also going to be on Saturday. UCSB at CSUN, that's also going to be on Saturday. Jessup Menlo is an intriguing matchup. And I mentioned, I forgot, I guess I should make a correction. Pepperdine and UCLA are playing on Saturday, not Friday. So that gives both teams a little bit of a day to rest, which I think is pretty nice. And then, like I said, on Saturday, UC San Diego is playing at Long Beach State. But Pepperdine UCLA is probably your matchup of the week or series of the week right there. I mean, you can make the argument that it could also be Hawaii UC Irvine, but Pepperdine UCLA are both tied for first place in the MPSF. The only difference is that UCLA has taken on the likes of USC and Stanford. I don't think Pepperdine has yet to take on the likes of Stanford and USC. And UCLA has yet to take on the likes of BYU. So I think for UCLA, this is going to be where they really get tested this week. But if they can come away with 2 wins, then this shows the legitimacy of those gutty little Bruins. All right, but that is that for the NCAA Men's Volleyball Week 14 preview. So let's jump on into some NCAA beach volleyball. So I already went over the poll from last Tuesday's show. I guess we might as well just jump on into the week 6 recap. So in terms of the week 6 recap, the big headline was that Texas was able to pull off not 1, but 2 big wins as they took down number 1 UCLA and number 3 USC. So USC they already beat earlier in the season, but the UCLA win was very special. 1, because they were the number 1 team in the nation, and two because they bounced back after losing to Stanford, and 3, Steinmetzger is a UCLA alum, so you already know that win meant a lot to Steinmetzger. So that's a massive win right there for Texas. Feels like they finally beaten everyone that's pretty much a top 10 team. So great job to the Sandy Longhorns on getting that win. Absolutely a great win right there. So yeah, just to elaborate on that, we're already halfway through the NCAA beach volleyball season. It's hard to believe that we're already halfway through the season, and soon we're going to be getting into conference tournaments, and soon we're going to be getting into the NCAA tournament. So I got to get my butt in gear, and I got to, get myself to a beach volleyball duel so I can keep that streak of going to volleyball duels alive. But in terms of other matchups that happened last week, we had Florida State take down TCU a second time, which was a very good win in the Big 12 Challenge. You had Arizona State take down Arizona 5-0. Florida State edged out TCU 3-2, by the way. Boise State pulled off two ranked wins over the weekend as they took down number 20 South Carolina and number 19 South Carolina and number 20 Arizona, which was 2 big wins right there. And then Texas took down Long Beach State 4-1. That's a nice little win right there for the Longhorns. Long Beach State took down LSU 3-2 last week in Texas, which was a very good win right there. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Just circling the wagons back to Saturday. Texas, like I said, they beat USC. But prior to that Texas loss, they actually took down LSU 5-0, which was a nice little win right there. Stanford beat North Florida. That's not surprising right there. Stanford beat FAU. That's not too surprising right there. Nothing out of the ordinary right there. TCU took down Boise State 5-0, which is not really surprising if you ask me. I mean, God bless Boise State. They're a good team. It's just that they're now in a really tough conference. I think last year they were in not Coastal Carolina, Texas A&M Corpus Christi's conference, and now they're in the Big 12 conference in beach volleyball, which is really tough because you got a lot of good teams like Arizona State, Florida State, TCU. That's just a nightmare of a conference for Boise State. Anyway, USC swept FAU, not surprising there. Like I said, Texas took down UCLA 3-2, which was a massive win on the Longhorns' part. And I don't know if this was, and like I said, and I don't think I mentioned this. This was actually the first ever win for Texas over UCLA, and like I said, it was a special win right there, just because that was Steinmetzger's alma mater. He was a standout at UCLA, and the fact that he was able to pull off that win, his team was hungry for a win like that, and I bet you Stein was probably emotional when it came to seeing that win. I mean, emotional in a good way, just because he's happy that his team pulled off the win, and it was against his alma mater, so there you have it. Long Beach State took down FAU on Friday. That's a solid win right there. Kind of expected, though they did have a close call against North Florida, but you never know what happened with that matchup. Florida State took down Arizona 4-1. Not surprising. USC took down North Florida 4-1. UCLA took down LSU 5-0. TCU took down Arizona State 5-0. You also had Stanford taking down Texas on Friday 4-1. That's a nice win right there. So now you got to wonder, who's going to be number one in terms of NCAA beach volleyball? Will it be Stanford or will it be UCLA? I mean, based off of head-to-head when it comes to Stanford and UCLA, I give it to UCLA. But Stanford did beat Texas, and Stanford does have kind of the better overall record. So I imagine this one's going to be – I would not want to be a voter in the AVCA coaches poll or the AVCA poll overall. But I'd have to put my money on UCLA. But knowing Stanford, they're probably going to get the number one spot. But we'll have to wait and see tomorrow, just because I do this show on a Monday, not a Tuesday. TCU took down South Carolina on Friday in a sweep. Stanford took down LSU 4-1, which was a very good win right there. Well, maybe not very good win, but still a solid win. Wednesday, we had a very rare Wednesday match. We actually had Stanford taking down TCU at TCU 4-1, which was a very good win. This is the one instance where I wish I was at TCU, or I wish I was in Fort Worth with my brother, but unfortunately I wasn't. So it's a bummer. There was an upset, actually, other than on Friday, as South Carolina took down Arizona State 3-2, which was a huge win for those Gamecocks. And yeah, Arizona State just doesn't feel like the Arizona State that was undefeated before they lost to UCLA 5-0. So Florida State swept Boise State. That's not surprising right there. After nearly going down, and after beating them 3-2 like a week or so ago, Florida State was able to bust out the brooms on Boise State. So overall, that's pretty much that when it comes. Yeah, that's pretty much that when it comes to all of the notable matchups from NCAA beach volleyball season week number 6. And let's actually go to the NCAA website to see if the NCAA finally got their heads out of their you-know-whats and actually put the beach volleyball scores on the website. So, moment of truth, y'all. By the way, those scores were provided courtesy of collegebeachvb.com. So kudos to them. And still, to this day, the NCAA website does not have their updated scores, which is very disappointing. I'm so glad that collegebeachvb.com exists. Otherwise, I'd be screwed when it comes to trying to talk NCAA beach volleyball. But NCAA, you got to get your heads out of your rear ends. We're already halfway through the NCAA beach volleyball season, and you still have yet to update your score bug or your scores overall. You still have the TCU LMU national championship from last year, which is just unacceptable. It's just lazy overall, and it's surprising because NCAA beach volleyball gets a lot more love than NCAA men's volleyball, but NCAA men's volleyball has their scores updated. But NCAA beach volleyball doesn't have their scores updated. So it's really disappointing if you ask me. So NCAA, get your heads out of your rear ends and start providing equal opportunity for NCAA beach volleyball and NCAA men's volleyball. Please and thank you. All right, but that is that right there for the NCAA beach volleyball Week 6 recap. Week 7 is sure to bring a lot of fun. Hopefully, I'll be able to get to a NCAA beach volleyball duel sooner rather than later, just because soon the MPSF tournament will probably be on the week of the Big West Conference men's volleyball tournament, and that's going to be a sticky situation, but we shall see. But that'll do it for the NCAA beach volleyball portion of the show. We're going to take ourselves a quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got some MLV, LOVB, high school boys volleyball, and JUCO men's volleyball to discuss. So keep it locked here. You were listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernick.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies.
And your one-timers.
You wicked wristas.
And be sure to protect your five-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Locke.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Everybody, this is Teran Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows and also check out our sponsors and check out our website as well. So I actually do want to talk a little NCAA women's volleyball. So it was announced today that there's going to be a Big Ten SEC challenge, which there's actually going to be 2 volleyball matches being played at Wrigley Field. Yes, the Wrigley Field, the home of the Chicago Cubs. So Nebraska, Missouri will be facing one another at Wrigley Field, which I think is really cool. And then after that will be Kentucky and Penn State facing one another at Wrigley Field. And we already know Katie Schumacher-Cawley is a huge Chicago Cubs fan, and she loves being at Wrigley Field, as well as Emily Eman. So I just want to say that that's a really cool concept, having 2 volleyball matches at Wrigley Field, just because number one, Wrigley Field is actually in Chicago, which is where the Big Ten Media Day is held. And then number 2, I feel it's kind of like the best place to have a Big Ten SEC challenge, just because it's kind of like smack dab in the middle of everything. And that's just how I feel it. But I think it's a really cool thing to have basically volleyball in the outfield. That's just my little take, like right there. I just wish we would have more like events for like NCAA men's volleyball, like more unique venues for NCAA men's volleyball. I know we had like Penn State and Ohio State playing at the University of Pitt at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, but I think NCAA men's volleyball deserves more notable events outside of First Point Collegiate Challenge and outside of the whole of Ohio State, Penn State being at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. Like, it was a great event, and that drew 1,000 in attendance. But honestly, we need more NCAA men's volleyball events. But getting back to the slate of the Big Ten versus the SEC, or the Big Ten SEC Challenge, I think that's a really cool concept because both those conferences have really good teams within their conference. I mean, obviously, you have the SEC with Kentucky and Texas A&M both making the national championship. You had Nebraska, which was number 1 throughout most of the season. You had USC, which was solid. I wouldn't say they were the greatest, but still good. Purdue was really good. They made it all the way to the Elite 8, which I don't think most people had them going to. And obviously you have Texas, which made the Elite 8 as well. Wisconsin made the Final 4. I really dig the whole USC versus Texas matchup, because Texas USC is basically a classic rivalry, not just in like volleyball or football, but in like all sorts of other sports. My only wish is that I wish that Texas and USC was played at Galen Center instead of being played in Austin, which it is what it is. I mean, Gregory Gymnasium will obviously draw a bigger crowd than Galen Center. With all due respect to USC and Galen Center, I just think that I really would like to go to a big-time volleyball event outside of California. The only problem is I'm not made of money. I don't have that big sponsorship, and Set Point isn't as big as I would hope it would be. But it is what it is, and sometimes that's just how it is. Anyway, that's that little bit of NCAA women's volleyball news. Like, Kentucky's schedule is kind of starting to form throughout for the most part. I think I saw Hunter Mitchell's post where Kentucky's playing a lot of teams that made the NCAA tournament from last year, which I think is really cool if you ask me. So I actually am pulling up Hunter Mitchell's post right here. So Kentucky's announced schedule so far, just in the non-conference: Wisconsin, a team that made the Final Four; Pitt, another team that made the Final Four; UCLA, a team they beat in the NCAA tournament in round 2; Penn State, another team that made the NCAA tournament that made it to round 2; Louisville, a team that made it to the Sweet 16. That's the Battle of the Bluegrass. And they'll likely play either Houston, Purdue, or SMU. SMU was a team that made the Sweet 16. Purdue, as we all know, they made the Elite Eight. And then Houston, even though they kind of have had a little bit of a down couple of years, obviously with the transition of going into the Big 12, they're still a solid squad. And the sites are for some of their matches include the Bahamas, which is basically Houston, Purdue, SMU; Wrigley Field, which is where they'll be playing Penn State; and then Milwaukee, which I imagine they'll be playing Wisconsin. So, yeah, the schedule is, I definitely agree with Hunter Mitchell. The schedule is so unreal. And this is just their non-conference schedule. They still have the SEC. They still have the likes of Texas they have to play. They still have the likes of probably Florida that's still going to be good, even though they lost Alexis Stuckey to Penn State. They've got Missouri, which I think is going to be pretty good as well. And Texas A&M, obviously the reigning national champs, and so on and so forth. So I think this is going to be a real fun season for Kentucky women's volleyball. And they bring back most of their roster. They did lose a few players to the transfer portal, and they did lose Eva Hudson to graduation. But I think this Kentucky team is still going to be on their A game. I think they're still a top 3 team. They're for sure a top 5 team, but I would put them in the top 3. I'd probably have them at maybe number 2. I mean, it all depends on what Texas A&M has. I think Texas A&M does return a good chunk of its team, though they did lose a good chunk of their team. I still would have Nebraska 1. I'd have Kentucky 2, and then I'd have maybe Texas A&M 3, and then 4 would probably be Texas, maybe Wisconsin. No. I think it would be Texas at 4, and then 5 would probably be Wisconsin, maybe Pitt as well, just because they got the setter from Penn State, whose name I'm blanking on, but you know who I'm talking about, the one that entered the transfer portal and that stepped away due to mental health. So yeah, I that's pretty much my top 5, and I just wanted to talk a little about NCAA women's volleyball, just because, well, even though I would prefer to cover NCAA men's volleyball, I would like to talk a little NCAA women's volleyball, just because it's kind of the big thing happening. Anyway, so that is that right there for the NCAA women's volleyball talk. Now let's get back on track and get on into the MLV. So in terms of the MLV, last week was actually All-Star Week, and we didn't have too many matches, but there were a good chunk of really good matches. Like, there was actually a good notable slate of matches. There were only 3 matches overall, not including the All-Star match, which actually had probably one of the more unique formats, which I'll get into it in a little bit. But going to the week 12 of the MLV season or Major League Volleyball season, you had going down. I mean, I guess we can count Tuesday, but we already talked about Tuesday, where the Columbus Fury took down the Orlando Valkyries for their first home win of the season. That's a real bad loss right there. Anyway, so Wednesday, we'll call that the start of week 12 of the MLV season. We had a big upset right here. We had the Grand Rapids Rise taking down the Indy Ignite in 4 at Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which I thought was a very good win right there. So a massive win right there for the Grand Rapids. It keeps their low playoff hopes alive, but it's still a very good win just because you beat the league leader of the league, the league leader of the league. You beat the league leader. Anyway, Grand Rapids was led by Isabeth Ine and Carly Snyder, both having 14 kills. They also got 12 kills from Paige Briggs-Romine. And then for Indy, they were led by Azani Taylor and Taylor Landfair, both having 11 kills. But it wasn't enough. That loss is actually going to prove to be costly in a little bit. So it's a good win for Grand Rapids because they haven't really had too many big-time wins. But honestly, I think I'm hoping for their sake this isn't the case of way too little, far too late, because they're still in the playoff race. They're actually, believe it or not, only 2 games back of the final playoff spot, and that race for the 3rd and 4th spot is actually pretty tight. They're 2 games back of the 4th place spot, and then they're 2.5 games back of the 3rd place spot. But I digress in that regard. So you had that right there. That was a good win for Grand Rapids, keeps their little playoff hopes alive. And then also on Wednesday, we had another upset. We had the San Diego Mojo finally getting back into the win column and beating the Omaha Supernovas. So one team was red hot going into, okay, maybe not red hot, but one team was hot going into this matchup, and then the other was kind of cold going into this matchup. But the Mojo were able to pick up the win. That's a big win right there for the Mojo. I want to say they took the season series against the Omaha Supernovas. I can't entirely be sure of that, but it sounds like from what my math has been mathing, it feels like the Mojo have beaten the Supernovas, I think 3 times out of 4, if not 4 times out of 5. I'm not sure. Either way, Maya Tabron led the way for San Diego with 17 kills and 10 digs. You also had Jovana Brakocevic, who had 13 kills. Grace Loberg had 11 kills. Brakocevic had 10 digs. And then Maren Grote had 10 kills as well. So a lot of offense being distributed when it came to San Diego's offense. As assist-wise, Marley Monserrat did an excellent job of leading or setting the offense to success. She had 45 assists and 11 digs. As a team, San Diego hit 266, which wasn't bad, while keeping Omaha to a hitting percentage of 212. As the Supernovas were led by Sarah Parsons, who had 16 kills, while Emily Londot had 14 kills. Quiet night for Brooke Nutt. Okay, maybe not quiet night. She had 9 kills, which wasn't terrible, but Omaha really could have used this win just because that could have gotten them even closer to the Dallas Pulse and probably further away from the 4th, 5th, and 6th place teams. But don't look now, but Omaha is back to being 10-10, so they're at 500. I'm certain Omaha will be fun. I'm certain this is just they had one of those matches. And their streak was bound to be broken. It's just that, and you kind of also have to give them a little bit of a pass just because San Diego, they have to go all across, they have to go kind of across, I wouldn't say across the country, but like midway through the country, all the way through the West Coast. And it's tough to play at San Diego, at Viejas Arena, especially since there was like an NCAA tournament match. And it's a Wednesday match. So we can kind of forgive the Supernovas, but the Supernovas better not be having too many of these close call matches right there. And then Thursday, to close off the week before All-Star break, we had the Dallas Pulse outlasting the Atlanta Vibe in a 5-set barn burner. So Dallas, with this win, that win actually helps them, which I'll get into in a little bit. Mimi Collier led the way with 27 kills and 10 digs. Dallas also got 16 kills from Sofia Maldonado Diaz, as well as 16 digs. Kaylee Cox had 12 kills to go along with 10 digs. As a team, Dallas hit 290, which was very good, while holding the Atlanta Vibe to only a hitting percentage of 207. The Vibe were led by Pia Timmer, who had 16 kills and 11 digs. They also got 10 kills each from Anna Dixon and Phoebe Awalier. But it wasn't enough, as Atlanta missed out on a golden opportunity to pull off a big upset, which is just a bummer, but it is what it is. And at least Atlanta's trying. But the win for Dallas really helps them, because now they're only a half a game back of the Indy Ignite in terms of first place in the league. This Dallas Pulse team, in its first season in the MLV, is absolutely insane. This team has been really impressive, and they could be one of the favorites to win the whole thing. I wonder if they would be the first team in its tenure to win a pro championship. I wonder if they'd be the first pro team to win a championship in its first year. I'd have to look that up, but we'll see. So this past Saturday was All-Star Saturday afternoon, maybe morning, depending on what your point of view is. But last Saturday was All-Star Saturday afternoon at Addition Financial Arena in Orlando, where Team Lanier, coached by Beth Lanier, the former Utah coach, coached off against Team Meskey. Dan Meskey, the Louisville coach. In the end, Team Meskey took down Team Lanier 2-1. So the format for the first two sets were as follows. So the format was, you played at 25 points. There's no cap. Like, you don't have to win by 2 points. You just have to get to 25 first, and then that score total will be added on into the second set score total, where you'd have to make it to 25 points, but you don't have to win by 2. So the third set is what decides everything. So the third set, you still have to win by 2, and then depending on the point total, I think you still have to win that as well. So it's a weird all-star format. I mean, it's not really bad. I mean, I get the effort. I get you're trying to be unique. And from what I heard is that the third set, Team Meskey actually made a comeback in that third set to win. My only qualm for this all-star event is that it was a 9 a.m. Pacific start time. So for West Coasters, I get it. It's being played in Orlando. It's at noon. And maybe there was like a all-star autograph event or something like that. But it's kind of hectic for us West Coasters. But I don't know. But then again, there's only one West Coast team, and that's the San Diego Mojo. So I don't know. But yeah, it was a good little all-star event. I mean, I'm not going to bash it just because it's an all-star event. It's not really supposed to be taken too seriously, as leading Team Meskey in the win was Charity Looper of the Orlando Valkyries, who had 9 kills and 6 digs. They also got 8 kills from Leah Edmond of the Indy Ignite, I want to say. And then they also got 5 kills each from Sofia Maldonado Diaz of the Dallas Pulse, and 5 kills from Emily Londot of the Omaha Supernovas. As a team, Team Meskey hit 202 while holding Team Lanier to a hitting percentage of 171. As leading Team Lanier in the win was Mimi Collier of the Dallas Pulse with 10 kills. They also got 6 kills from Paige Briggs-Romine of the Grand Rapids Rise, and they got 5 kills each from Brooke Nuneviller of the Omaha Supernovas and Natalie Foster of the Orlando Valkyries. And then both teams ran they ran separate offenses. I think they ran a 6-2 offense, or they rotated setters and liberos. And in terms of setters, Team Meskey had Natalia Valentine Anderson and Marley Monserrat, while Team Lanier had the likes of Champu, and they also got Mia Tuaniga, which I thought was pretty cool. So there's that right there. Maybe one day they'll have the MLV All-Star match at Viejas Arena, knock on wood. And hopefully I'll be able to see that. I still have yet to go to an MLV match. I need to go to an MLV match. So there's that right there. So now let's jump to the Week 13 preview. So Week 13, this is basically I would say the last push. But starting off Week 13, it'll be on Thursday. And we've got this is an intriguing matchup. The Omaha Supernovas at the Atlanta Vibe at Georgia State Convocation Center. So that's a unique place to play their matches. So just like League One volleyball, the Georgia State Convocation Center will be playing its matches there. So look at the Atlanta Vibe. They're 8-10, while Omaha has 2 matches up on them. They're 10-10. So Atlanta needs this win so badly. They need to win this match in order to have any sort of hope to make the playoffs. Omaha, on the other hand, they need this win to strengthen their grip on that 3 spot, because who would they rather want to play in the playoffs? Would they want to play the Indy Ignite, or would they want to play the Dallas Pulse? I mean, both teams I think Omaha can actually beat, but I think if I had to pick, I'd maybe say the Pulse, just because Omaha has that familiarity within their team with players like Brooke Nuneviller and Sydney Hilly and so on and so forth. Sydney Hilly is probably the biggest X factor on the Supernovas come playoff time, just because, for starters, she's been to both Match for a Millions, as she wound up winning the Match for a Million with the Supernovas in the PVF/MLV's inaugural year. And then last year she was on the Match for a Million with the Indy Ignite. So now if she plays her cards right, she could be back in terms of playing for the Match for a Million with the Omaha Supernovas, but we shall see. All right, then Friday we've got a doubleheader. We've got, first starting off, we have the San Diego Mojo at the Columbus Fury at Nationwide Arena. So the San Diego Mojos, they got to build off that win over Omaha. If there's ever a match that San Diego needs to win, it's this one. Columbus has only won 1 match at home this year. San Diego needs to strike while the iron's hot. They can't afford to lose this one. If they can't win this matchup, then I don't know if they deserve the playoffs. I mean, it's quite fascinating that they're in the playoff hunt. Sorry if my nose is a little itchy, but yeah, it's quite fascinating that San Diego is well in the playoff hunt. Like, they're only a couple games back of Omaha, and they're only 1 full game back of Orlando. So one bad week could derail playoff hopes, and one good week could put you back into the playoff convo. So San Diego just has to take care of business against Columbus. So that's pretty much what they need to do. And then Columbus is out to play spoiler. I wouldn't underestimate them by any means if I were San Diego, but I digress. Then also on Friday, we have the Dallas Pulse at the Grand Rapids Rise at Van Andel Arena. All right, Dallas, look, this is an interesting week for them. So they possibly could be in first place, but they got the Grand Rapids Rise to deal with on Friday. Grand Rapids is still well within the playoff hunt. They're a couple games back of the final playoff spot, but if they play their cards right, I think they're a game and a half back of the final playoff spot. But either way, Grand Rapids needs to start running the table for the most part. It's going to be tough with this Dallas team, but if they're able to beat the Indy Ignite, they can beat the Dallas Pulse. And Dallas is coming off of a 5-set win over Atlanta, so no one is really safe when it comes to the MLV. So we shall see when it comes to this matchup. I think it's going to be a fun matchup. Then Saturday, you've got a very, 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 very intriguing matchup between the Indy Ignite and the Omaha Supernovas at CHI Health Center. All right, a win here for Omaha could definitely strengthen their grip in terms of making the playoffs. This is a huge week for Omaha, just because if they want to have any sort of hope of making the playoffs for sure, they're going to need to cross their T's and dot their I's. They've beaten the Indy Ignite twice this season. It's just a matter of, can they beat them at CHI Health Center? The interesting thing is for Omaha is that they're still 4-6 at home. That said, Omaha's starting to play better ball. I just think that the loss to San Diego was kind of a letdown spot, just because the All-Star break was right around the corner, and also they had to go all across the country, pretty much across the country, to San Diego to play that match. So I think for Omaha, they just have to, if they want to win, they're going to have to play to their potential and make sure they don't play down to the, I wouldn't say play down to the competition, but they don't like fall behind to the competition of Indy, and then Indy just catches fire, because Indy also needs the win. They need to get back into the win column for sure, because that loss to Grand Rapids was not good. that loss was a bad loss right there. So Indy needs the win to stay at top of the standings, while Omaha needs the win to tighten its grip in terms of a playoff berth. And then also on Saturday, this is probably the match of the week right here. It's not one of the more de facto matchups. The Orlando Valkyries at the Atlanta Vibe. So the good news is for the Vibe is that they have Brittany Abercrombie back. I'm not sure about Hannah Maddox, but having Brittany Abercrombie back is a game changer. She was the league's MVP last year. That said, Atlanta is hungry for a playoff spot. And looking at the standings right now, Orlando is one full game ahead of Atlanta. So this goes back to what I said previously. One bad week could flip you from being a playoff team to a non-playoff team and vice versa in terms of having a good week. But this one's going to be a fun matchup right here. I'm interested to see what the Valkyries can do. And now that Abercrombie had that full week off, just because Orlando didn't play last week, I just realized that Orlando did not play last week by any means. Well, they played Tuesday, but I think after that Tuesday match, I think they definitely needed the time off just because they still need to lick their wounds and whatnot. So looking at Orlando, Atlanta, this is probably a de facto matchup right here. This could make or break playoff hopes. And I'm guessing that's the reason why it's on CBS Sports Network. But I think it's going to be a very fun matchup. So I look forward to hopefully watching that. And then Sunday, you have, to close off Week 13, you've got the Grand Rapids Rise at the Columbus Fury. Ooh. This one kind of has toilet bowl written all over it. Okay, that's a little mean to say. But this is kind of the battle of the bottom. The two worst teams in the league going at one another. If Grand Rapids Rise wants to make the playoffs, this is where they got to win. If they win right here, then they still have a shot at the playoffs. If they don't win, if they lose, they don't deserve the playoffs by any means. We might as well just write them off or start booking their tickets to Cancun. But Grand Rapids Rise has to win this matchup. They're facing a Fury team that has had the worst luck at home, and let alone the worst record at home. Now, the latter Sunday matchup is going to be a little bit more interesting, as you got the Dallas Pulse at the San Diego Mojo. So this is an intriguing matchup for the Pulse. They need the win in order to stay in the top two and stay within striking distance of the Indy Ignite. But the Mojo need this win in order to keep their playoff hopes afloat, because one loss could derail their playoff hopes. And where San Diego is standing right now, they're actually sixth in the standings, right behind Atlanta and Orlando. Orlando has the final playoff spot, but only by one game. Like, San Diego is tied for Atlanta for fifth in the playoff, in the regular season standings, or the standings altogether. So either way, San Diego's really got to play up to its potential, and they're going to need to start pulling off some upsets. They did so against Omaha, but they're going to have to continue to pull up. They have to beat at least some team that's even bigger than the Supernovas. And this is probably the best matchup to try to win at, just because you're at home, and Dallas is a good team, but they're not invincible by any means. So San Diego has got to play up to its potential, and they got to play like their playoff lives truly depend on it. So that's that for the Week 13 preview, and I'm looking at when the final week of the regular season is. The final week of the regular season is on May 3rd. So pretty much within 1 month, we're going to be seeing who makes the postseason and who doesn't, because Sunday, May 3rd is going to be a triple header, which has the Atlanta Vibe, Columbus Fury, San Diego Mojo, Indy Ignite, Orlando Valkyries, and Dallas Pulse playing one another. And then Grand Rapids isn't even playing on Friday, the Friday of that week. They play on Thursday. So, okay, so there's that right there, but I'm looking way too far ahead. So May 3rd, mark your calendar, because that's the last day of the regular season. But right now, Week 13 is on the horizon. So there you have it. That's going to do it for Week 13 preview of Major League Volleyball. So now let's jump on into Week 12 of League One Volleyball. So Week 12 was rather a fascinating week, as some teams are starting to catch fire at the best time. So one team that has really impressed me as of late is Nebraska, but we'll save them for later. One team that's kind of been going in the wrong direction or trending down is Salt Lake. So Houston swept Salt Lake, which, look, Salt Lake is ice cold, and we're even getting in a Fena Kasakpala watch, which shout out to Avid Volley for that little thing. But yeah, for Salt Lake, we're still wondering when the Ifina Kasakpala is going to be, when we're going to be seeing Ifina Kasakpala into the lineup. And that's the Ifina Kasakpala watch. So this was on Wednesday. Houston's already clinched a playoff spot. I think they want the number one overall seed. They want the number one seed in terms of the playoffs. So you have that right there. That's something to also take into consideration. I can imagine Houston's going to want to continue to go all out. And that's a nice little bounce back win after they suffered a tough loss to Madison. And by tough loss, I mean they got swept. But I digress. Also on Wednesday, we had, like I mentioned, Nebraska taking down Atlanta in a reverse sweep. That was a massive win right there. And Nebraska they're playing probably the best ball, debatably. I mean, other than Houston, I think Nebraska is playing some of their best ball. And there was a point where they were nearing the bottom with Madison, but now you're about to see that they have climbed the standings. And that's a massive win for LOVB Nebraska. Then we jumped to Thursday. We had LOVB Austin getting back into the win column and taking down Madison in 4. Much needed win for Austin. Then Saturday we had a doubleheader. First match of the doubleheader was LOVB Nebraska taking on LOVB Salt Lake, where Nebraska swept Salt Lake. Once again, Salt Lake is trending downward. Nebraska is trending upward. It's to the point where Nebraska is actually in third place in the LOVB standings. Well, actually, they're tied for third with Salt Lake, but Nebraska's won 3 straight matches, while Salt Lake has lost 3 straight matches. So I think Nebraska is a definite threat to watch for in terms of the League One volleyball playoffs. I mean, between those two teams, as well as Atlanta and Austin, 3 of those teams will be making the playoffs. One team will be on the outside looking in. And speaking of LLVB Atlanta, they swept Madison last Saturday as well. It's been one of those seasons for Madison, unfortunately. And like I mentioned, only 4 teams advanced to the playoffs. 2 will be left out. That's good. It's kind of good, kind of bad. I kind of see why they had all 6 teams making the playoffs last year, because it was the inaugural year. But now they kind of came up with an actual format, and now they now have a set playoff structure, which I think is pretty cool. All right, now let's jump to the Week 13 preview. So Week 13 preview, we've got the 2 red hot teams, LOVB Nebraska and LOVB Houston. I mean, Houston's kind of back on track, but Nebraska is the team that's won more games as of late. If there's ever a game for Nebraska to really prove that they're a playoff team, this is the one. If there's ever a game where Houston has to come up big on the road, this is the one. I mean, Houston's kind of got a vice grip in terms of like a playoff spot. They've already locked up a playoff spot, but I imagine they want more. They want the number 1 seed. And is this the last week? Holy guacamole! This is the last week of the regular season. Oh God have mercy. Okay, so this is actually the last week of the regular season. So let's actually change this a little bit. So Week 17, Week 13 preview. Last week of... God, time has flown by. Regular season. Yeah, it feels like yesterday that the league just started. So we're already this is the last week of the regular season. So looking at the standings, Houston is in first place at 12-6. Atlanta's in second place at 10-8. Nebraska, Salt Lake are tied for third at 9-9. Austin, last year's champion, is in 5th place at 8-10. And then Madison is bringing up the rear at 6-12, and they're not going to the playoffs. Sorry, Matt Furbringer. All right, but now, all right, we got to lock in for this last full week. So Nebraska-Houston, this is a huge match for Nebraska. So if there's ever a match that Nebraska has to win, this is the one. A win pretty much gets them so close to the playoffs. Heck, I could even go as far as to say if they win this match, they're pretty much a shoo-in for the playoffs. If Houston wins, then they pretty much have the number 1 seed on lock for the most part. It looks, from the looks of things, it looks like every team's playing this week, or playing twice at least. But yeah, Houston needs the win to get close to locking up the number 1 seed. I mean, the only way I don't see them locking up the number 1 seed is if they lose that matchup and then they lose their second matchup, and then the team from behind manages to win the rest of the way. But I digress. We'll get to that a little bit later. But for now, Houston, Nebraska is going to probably be the matchup of the week. That one's going to be in for good reason. So yeah, that's going to be a really good matchup. Then Thursday, you've got LOVB Salt Lake at LOVB Austin. Man, this is kind of the battle of the ice cold team that was red hot, that was pretty much looked like they were practically invincible, and but now they've gone the other direction, and they're taking on an Austin team that could be in danger of missing the playoffs because they've just had that type of year. Also, you got to remember, Austin was the team that wound up winning the League One Volleyball Championship last year, and they wound up, and now they could be on the verge of missing the postseason altogether. So Austin needs the win entirely, but so does Salt Lake. Like a loss for Austin pretty much would really hurt their chances of missing the playoffs, and they would need to win their last matchup of the season, which is actually could be a de facto matchup for the final playoff spot. So something's got to give here, and you already know I'm going to be keeping an eye on the League One volleyball standings a little bit more. And then also on Thursday, we have LOVB Atlanta taking on LOVB Madison. So Madison, we already know they're eliminated from playoff contention. Sorry, Madison fans. But Atlanta still has a chance at the number 1 seed. In other words, so you're telling me there's a chance. Awesome. But Atlanta, here's the thing. Atlanta has to take care of business against Madison because their next matchup is actually going to be a really tough matchup. So they played the worst team in the league. If they find a way to lose to Madison, they don't deserve the number 1 seed. But for Atlanta, I imagine they should be making the playoffs. I can't imagine seeing them miss the playoffs because I don't see a scenario where they're missing the playoffs. I mean, between Atlanta and Austin, I mean, and then you also got Salt Lake you have to configure in as well. The only way I see Atlanta missing the playoffs is if they lose their next 2 matches and then Salt Lake wins their next 2 matches, and then or Salt Lake splits their matches and then Austin wins their 2 matches and then Nebraska splits their matches, which if that were the case, if those 4 teams finished 10-10, that would be so funny. I can't imagine tiebreaker situations. But Atlanta plays Madison on Thursday. They should win that one. Saturday, they're actually back in action at Georgia Tech's McCamish Pavilion. So that's cool. They're playing at Georgia Tech on Saturday, and then they're playing at Alliant Energy Center on Thursday. So Saturday, Atlanta is hosting Houston. So this is interesting. So if Houston wins its matchup against Nebraska, I imagine Houston might be resting its starters, or at least limiting their starters and making sure they don't get hurt. So this could actually open the door for Atlanta here in terms of like locking up the 2 seed. But we'll have to wait and see when it comes down to that. I think this can go either way. I mean, it's the battle of the 2 best teams in the league, so you never know what you'll get. And then also on Saturday, you've got LOVB Madison at LOVB Salt Lake. If Salt Lake doesn't win this matchup, they don't deserve the playoffs. They're at home. Madison doesn't have anything to play for, which is kind of scary. Salt Lake has everything to play for in terms of the playoffs. Salt Lake, they have to win this one. And then also on Saturday, which is the last match of the regular season, you've got LOVB Austin at LOVB Nebraska. So this is an interesting little matchup. So let's say Nebraska loses to Houston. And then let's say Austin beats Salt Lake. And then let's say Salt Lake beats Madison. That would put Nebraska at 9-10. That would put Salt Lake at 10-10. And that would put Austin at 9-10 as well. So this match would probably be an elimination match. So if it boils down to Austin and Nebraska both being 9-10 and both battling for that final playoff spot, oh man, that match could be a bloodbath right there. And it's at Baxter Arena, and you already know Nebraska fans are going to be showing up and showing out. I mean, I know the Omaha Supernovas also played that night, but this is crucial right here. This is for the playoffs. This is win or go home here. This could be the win or go home matchup right here. Now, that's barring Austin doesn't lose to Salt Lake, and that's barring Nebraska doesn't lose, and that's barring Nebraska doesn't beat Houston. But you never know with this matchup. I mean, this is a rematch of last year's League One Volleyball Championship. It's definitely going to be a fun little matchup right here. So I think it's going to be a really good matchup, and I think we should expect a barn burner. This is basically the last week of the regular season. The season just flew by just like that. I am just in utter disbelief. But there you have it. That is basically your League One Volleyball Week 13 preview of the final week of the regular season. This is the final frontier. And I really got to get on the horn in terms of getting a credential to potentially be at the League One Volleyball Championship in Long Beach. I think it's going to be that's going to be a very fun venue. I'm just hoping it brings in a bunch of revenue, so we'll see. All right, but that's that for League One Volleyball. So let's talk a little high school boys volleyball. So just briefly, there was a lot of upsets in high school boys volleyball. And also there was the First Point tournament in Austin, Texas, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't remember the team's name, but a team from Oklahoma wound up winning it as Windward, the team that wound up winning it last year. They sadly got dethroned. I think they lost in either the quarterfinals or the semifinals. But regardless, that was you can find out more about the First Point tournament in terms of like the First Point's maybe their website, if not their Instagram, because they're more active on Instagram than they are on Twitter, which is kind of sad, but whatever. Anyway, so high school boys volleyball, there was a lot of upsets last week. So we had Edison of Huntington Beach taking down Corona Del Mar. So Corona Del Mar was number 3 in terms of the USA Today national poll last time there was a poll, but Edison took them down in 4, which was really impressive. And then you also had Los Alamitos taking down number 11 Newport Harbor on the road in 4 as well. Newport Harbor was number 11 in the USA Today poll. Los Alamitos is definitely a sneaky good team. I think that's an underrated team, and that could be a threat come the CIF Southern Section playoffs. And then on Thursday, we had the upset of all upsets. Number 6 Redondo Union took down number 1 Miracosta in 5. I want to say it's like the first win over Miracosta for Redondo Union since 2019, which was really impressive for the Seahawks. That was a very good win right there, and it shows that Redondo Union definitely can hang with the best of them. Like, they beat Newport Harbor, obviously. They were so close to taking down Loyola. They hung tough with Corona Del Mar at the Redondo tournament, and the fact that they beat Miracosta is a marquee win right there for Kevin Norman's squad. But the rematch is going to be so poppin'. It's going to be on April 20th, which I think it's going to be a real barn burner right there. I'm hoping to be in attendance. I think it'll be a fun matchup. And then I guess I should mention this matchup. Number 5 Huntington Beach took down number 3 Corona Del Mar. So Huntington Beach, with that win, actually is in first place in its league with Corona Del Mar, the Sunset League. But Corona Del Mar has now lost 2 straight matches. I'm going to be at their match tomorrow for Battle of the Bay when they play Newport Harbor. That's an interesting matchup because if Corona Del Mar loses that matchup, that's 3 straight losses, and they might as well just forego winning the Sunset League. But more importantly, that could even hurt their seeding in terms of playoffs. But I am still confident in Corona Del Mar. I think the Sea Kings are still a legit team. I definitely think that they're still a threat in terms of the CIF Southern section in Division 1. And a lot of teams go through rough patches. I think Corona Del Mar is not the lone exception because they've had a few rough losses here and there. They had a couple losses to Miracosta, one in the best 3 out of 5 format, and then the other in the Best of the West tournament final. Then they lost to Loyola, which saw the return of Blake Fallbush. And then these two losses kind of yield a little bit of a cry for help or a little bit of a warning. But a win against Newport Harbor tomorrow, I think, can clear all the doubt. I definitely think the Sea Kings have what it takes to win. If they play reckless and they miss a bunch of serves and they just underestimate Newport Harbor, because Newport Harbor is still a solid team. But if they do all that, then I can see Newport Harbor winning. Because Newport Harbor, they've lost I think they've lost 5 in a row to Corona Del Mar. They lost that one time with Sterling. They lost. I'm sorry. Okay, I said 5 in a row. There was 4 in a row. They lost the one year where Sterling Foley was in his final year at Corona Del Mar before he graduated. Newport Harbor lost twice to CDM last year. They lost to them this year. So yeah, it has been 4 straight times. And I know one of Newport Harbor's players, Tyler Pence, wants to beat Corona Del Mar because he has yet to beat them ever in his high school career, whether it's at the lower levels or at the varsity level. But you already know Newport Harbor is going to be hungry coming into that matchup because I'll just say this: they definitely could have beaten Los Alamitos. I wasn't at that match. I had to forego it. I was close to attending, but sadly I couldn't. But unfortunately, I think Los Alamitos was just due for a big win. So sadly, that's just how it is when it comes to the game of volleyball. But yeah, this week, there was more upsets in the high school boys volleyball in terms of the AVCA/USA Today poll than there was in NCAA men's volleyball last week, which I think is pretty funny. And then there was also a couple big upsets in the 3C2A in men's volleyball, as last Friday we had 2 big upsets. We had number 9 San Diego Mesa upsetting number 2 Golden West in San Diego in 4, which was a massive win right there. And then we also had number 6 Fullerton upending number 3 Santa Barbara City in 4. So that's another pair of big wins right there. And meanwhile, Orange Coast College is just demolishing everybody. And if they win both their matches this week, they clinch at least a share of their division title, which you could pretty much lock them in terms of the number 1 seed, barring they don't lose their last 2 matchups. But we shall see. A lot can happen in the span of 2 weeks. But for now, Orange Coast College is just looking really good. But I talked to Travis. He said his team would rather have at least 2 losses just because there's a lot of pressure when it comes to winning a lot of these matches, just because when you're undefeated and you're in the playoffs, you cannot afford to lose by any means necessary. Whereas if you've already lost at least once, you don't have that pressure of staying undefeated and keeping that undefeated streak alive. I remember OCC's 2019 team where they were undefeated, and then they lost to Irvine Valley in the semifinals, and that IVC team wound up losing to Long Beach City in the state championship as well. So, yeah, a lot can happen in the span of 2 weeks, and a lot has been happening in terms of 3C2A men's volleyball. But OCC definitely looks like they could be the clear-cut favorite, but we shall see. All right, that's that. That's that for that little bit of 3C2A men's volleyball right there. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I appreciate everybody for tuning in for as much as they possibly can. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all of the support not only when it comes to the show, but on social media. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have an amazing week. Enjoy all the volleyball action. And I will see you on Friday at UC Irvine for Hawaii UC Irvine. If not, maybe Vanguard BYU on Thursday. But regardless, have a great week, everybody. Peace.